The massive crystal dome of the Stellar Council glowed with a soft blue light as hundreds of representatives from across the galaxy gathered for what would become a historic meeting. The chamber's design allowed each member to see and hear one another clearly, though today many wished they couldn't. The argument had been going on for hours. Lord Stone stood at the center platform, his crystalline form catching and reflecting light as he gestured with growing frustration. The humans expand too quickly. They take worlds that could be ours, mine resources we need, and show no respect for the ancient order of space. His voice boomed through the chamber, and many of the younger race representatives nodded in agreement. Only the elders remained still. Among them sat Gray, oldest of the elder race, his cloud-like form shifting slowly as he watched the proceedings. His kind had seen civilizations rise and fall over millions of years. They had witnessed the humans' first steps into space, and they alone truly understood what Lord Stone was proposing to challenge. Commander Swift, the military advisor to the Crystal Empire, stepped forward. His transparent body contained swirling patterns of light that pulsed with excitement as he activated the chamber's display system. "Our forces are superior in every way," he declared, showing images of the Crystal Empire's mighty war fleets. "Our ships are faster, our weapons more powerful, and our soldiers linked by unbreakable telepathic bonds. The humans are divided, their ships primitive, and their colonies vulnerable." A murmur of approval rippled through the chamber. The Crystal Empire had never lost a war, and many younger races looked to them for leadership. Their confidence was infectious. Gray floated forward, his ancient voice cutting through the excitement like a cold wind. "You do not understand what you propose," he said. The chamber grew quiet. When an elder spoke, even the proudest races listened. "Our archives hold the stories of 17 civilizations that fought as you do now. 17 races that believed their superior technology and unified purpose would guarantee victory over humans." Lord Stone's crystalline surface flickered with annoyance. "Ancient history. The humans of those stories were different. We have studied them for decades. They fight among themselves, their governments bicker, and their military forces use outdated technology. And yet," Gray continued, his form darkening like a storm cloud, "they survive. They adapt. Did you know humans are the only species that deliberately makes their training more difficult than actual combat? They have a saying, 'The more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war.'" Commander Swift dismissed this with a wave of his luminescent arm. "Primitive wisdom from a primitive species. Our analysis shows we can take their outer colonies in days. Without their mining operations, their economy will collapse. They will surrender within weeks." Gray's form pulsed with what might have been sadness. "You see their divisions as weakness, but humans are like water. Try to grasp them, and they slip through your fingers. Strike them, and they flow around the blow. But dam them up." He paused, his form growing darker still. "They will find a way through, or over, or around. And when they do, the flood will sweep away everything in its path." But Lord Stone had already made his decision. The Crystal Empire had spent years preparing for this moment, building weapons, positioning fleets. The humans would never see them coming. "We thank the elders for their concern," he said formally. "But the time for action has come. The Crystal Empire will lead this campaign. Any who wish to join us may do so. Any who stand with the humans will be treated as humans." As the chamber erupted in debate, Gray withdrew to where the other elders waited. They had seen this before. They knew what was coming. "How long?" one of the younger elders asked. "Until they learn." Gray's form swirled with complex patterns. "Not long. The humans will teach them. They always do." In the space above a human mining colony on Proxima b, the first Crystal Empire ships were already moving into position. The lesson was about to begin. The mining colony on Proxima b looked defenseless from space. Its domed structures gleamed weakly in the red dwarf's light, and only a few small ships moved between the asteroids where humans extracted precious metals. Commander Swift watched from his command ship, his crystalline form glowing with anticipated victory. "Begin the attack," he ordered. "Disable their communications first. No warnings, no demands. Show them our power." The Crystal Empire's warships descended like shining daggers through the dark. Their weapons, powered by pure energy, could slice through standard shields like paper. They expected the humans to panic, to run, to beg for mercy. They were wrong. The first sign that something was different came when their energy beams hit the colony's shields. Instead of failing, the shields absorbed the attack, glowing brighter with each hit. Commander Swift's light patterns shifted in confusion. "Impossible," he muttered. "Their shield technology is primitive." Unless his thoughts were interrupted by an alarm. The mining ships were changing. What looked like simple industrial vessels suddenly split open, revealing weapon systems hidden within their bulky frames. The asteroids themselves began to move, showing engine ports that had been concealed in their rocky surfaces. "It's a trap," Swift's second-in-command shouted, but it was too late. The humans struck back. Their ships, despite looking crude and primitive, fired weapons that the Crystal Empire's sensors couldn't track. Simple kinetic rounds, pieces of metal moving at incredible speeds, tore through the crystal ship's energy shields as if they weren't there. "They're using mining explosives as weapons," one of Swift's officers reported, his light patterns flickering in panic. "And the asteroids, they're all armed." The humans had turned their entire mining operation into a weapon. Every drill, every excavator, every piece of equipment served two purposes. What the Crystal Empire had thought would be an easy victory had become a nightmare. A human voice crackled across their communication channels, speaking in calm, measured tones. "This is Mining Colony Defense Commander Tom speaking. We've been watching you for weeks. Did you really think we wouldn't be ready?" Swift's ships tried to regroup, but the humans had positioned themselves perfectly. The asteroids they'd been mining weren't randomly placed. They formed a perfect kill zone. His beautiful crystal ships were being torn apart by what looked like mining equipment. "Fall back," Swift ordered, his voice carrying an emotion no Crystal Empire commander had felt in centuries. "Fear. Reform at Rally Point Beta." But the humans weren't finished. As the crystal ships turned to retreat, the miners revealed their final surprise. The very rocks they'd been mining exploded outward, filling space with clouds of metallic dust. The crystal ship's energy weapons turned the dust into superheated plasma, which flowed back along their energy beams like water through a pipe. 3 of Swift's finest ships died in seconds, their crystal structures melting from the inside out. The humans had turned the Crystal Empire's own weapons against them. "How?" Swift demanded, watching his fleet scatter. "How did they know? How did they prepare?" The answer came from an unexpected source. One of his bridge crew, monitoring human communications, spoke up. "Sir, they always prepare like this. These defenses weren't built for us. They're standard mining colony protocols. They treat every mining operation as a potential combat zone." Swift stared at the tactical display, watching his proud fleet retreat from what they'd thought would be an easy target. The humans hadn't even revealed their main military forces yet. This was just a mining colony, defended by miners. In his mind, he heard the Elder's warning again. "They are like water. Strike them, and they flow around the blow." As his damaged fleet limped away from Proxima B, Swift realized with growing dread that this wasn't the end. The humans wouldn't stay defensive for long. His attack hadn't cowed them. It had awakened them. And now they would respond. In the United Earth Defense Chamber, military leaders from every human nation sat in unusual silence. The massive screen before them showed the aftermath of the Proxima B battle. Admiral Wells, a weathered man with gray hair and steady eyes, stood at the center of the room. "The mining colony's defense was successful," he said, his voice carrying no celebration. "But this is just the beginning. The Crystal Empire has shown their hand. Now we show ours." Someone might have expected panic or chaos after an alien empire attacked humanity. Instead, there was only cold, focused anger in the room. Humans had spent centuries preparing for this moment, not because they knew the Crystal Empire would attack, but because they always prepared for everything. Implementation of the long game begins now. Wells continued, touching the display. A complex web of plans appeared, each connecting to others in ways that would have confused any non-human observer. Every colony, every ship, every citizen has a part to play. We've trained for this since we first reached the stars. The defense plans weren't new. They had been refined over decades, tested in countless simulations, and improved with each generation. Humanity hadn't just prepared for war. They had prepared for every kind of war imaginable. The Crystal Empire thinks they know us, Wells said, his fingers tracing lines across the star map. They see our divided governments as weakness, our different military forces as confusion, our scattered colonies as vulnerability. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. They're about to learn why we maintain these differences. Images flashed across the screen. Ships changing their identification signals, colonies going dark only to appear elsewhere, trade routes shifting like rivers changing course. The Crystal Empire would soon find themselves fighting not one human military, but dozens, each using different tactics, different technologies, different ways of thinking. We've already begun the counterattack, reported General West, her tablet showing real-time updates. Our deep space listening posts picked up their fleet movements weeks ago. While they planned their surprise attack, we seeded every possible approach route with automated weapons platforms disguised as debris. The room's atmosphere grew colder as more reports came in. The Crystal Empire's telepathic communication networks were being flooded with random signals from hidden human transmitters. Their supply lines were finding regular routes mysteriously filled with radiation that their crystal ships couldn't safely pass through. Even their star charts were becoming unreliable as human hackers fed false data into their navigation systems. The mining colony wasn't just defending itself, Admiral Wells explained. Every minute of that battle was recorded, analyzed, and transmitted. We now know exactly how their shields work, how their weapons function, and most importantly, how their commanders think. A junior officer spoke up, "But sir, won't they adapt? Change their tactics?" Wells's smile grew slightly wider. "We're counting on it. Every time they change, they'll be reacting to what they think they know about us. But they'll never know everything, because every human force fights differently. And while they're adapting to one tactic, we'll hit them with 5 more they've never seen." The display shifted to show the Crystal Empire's known territory. Hundreds of small dots represented their worlds, bases, and fleets. As the humans watched, many of these dots began to turn red. Targets already marked, weaknesses already found. They thought they could study us for a few decades and know how to defeat us, Wells said, his voice now barely above a whisper. But we've been preparing for this moment since we first invented the spear. Humanity doesn't just learn how to fight. We learn how to win. Around Earth and every human world, ships were moving into position. Not in large, obvious fleets, but in small groups, each with its own mission, its own tactics, its own way of bringing the fight to the enemy. The Crystal Empire had started this war expecting a simple conquest. They were about to learn why the elders had warned them never to fight humans. Commander Swift stood in the Crystal Empire's war room, his crystalline form dulled with stress. The display before him showed another failed attack, the third this week. His ships appeared as bright points of light, but the human vessels, they were everywhere and nowhere. "They're not fighting the way they're supposed to," he said, his voice carrying an unfamiliar tremor. "One human fleet fights like wild animals, all fury and aggression. The next shows perfect discipline and precision. There's no pattern, no way to predict." An alarm blared through the chamber. Another human attack, but this one was different. Swift watched as a small group of human ships appeared near one of their supply bases. His defenders moved to intercept, only to find themselves firing at holograms. The real human ships had already slipped past them. "Sir," one of his officers reported, light patterns flickering in distress. "We're getting reports from the base. The humans. They didn't destroy it. They replaced all our crystal fuel cells with fakes. Perfect copies, but useless. 15 ships are now stranded without power." Swift's form pulsed with barely controlled fear. The humans weren't just fighting. They were playing with them. Each attack seemed designed not just to hurt, but to teach the Crystal Empire about fear. In another sector, a Crystal Empire patrol encountered what seemed to be a damaged human merchant ship. They approached to capture it, following standard protocol. The merchant ship exploded into a cloud of microscopic robots that attached themselves to the crystal ship's hulls. They didn't damage the ships. They just drew silly faces on them. "They're mocking us," Lord Stone raged during the emergency council meeting. His once proud form now flickered with erratic patterns of doubt. "Using primitive jokes and tricks instead of fighting properly." But Swift was beginning to understand. "No," he said slowly, "they're fighting exactly as they want to. Our telepathic link was supposed to be our strength. We always know what our forces are thinking, feeling, planning. But the humans..." He paused, his crystalline surface dimming. "Each of their ships, each of their soldiers, thinks differently, acts differently. We can't predict them because they don't fight as one mind. They fight as thousands." Reports kept coming in. Human ships would appear from nowhere, strike in completely unexpected ways, then vanish. Sometimes they used advanced technology that seemed centuries ahead of what they'd shown before. Other times they won battles with tricks so simple and primitive that no advanced civilization would have fought to defend against them. A human fleet would be trapped, outgunned, and surrounded, only to reveal that they'd wanted to be surrounded. A seemingly cornered human squad would fight with such desperate fury that the Crystal Empire forces retreated, only to realize later that the humans had been laughing as they fought. Swift reviewed another battle recording, watching his beautiful ships being defeated by what looked like modified mining equipment and improvised weapons. "How do they keep surprising us? We've fought 17 battles, and they used 17 completely different strategies." The answer came from an unexpected source. A captured human prisoner, who seemed far too comfortable in his cell, smiled at his guards and said, "You know what humans did before we reached the stars. We spent thousands of years fighting each other. Every battle, every war taught us something new. You're not fighting one species with one way of fighting. You're fighting every warrior, every soldier, every fighter humanity has ever produced. We remember all of it." The prisoner's words spread through the Crystal Empire's telepathic network like a virus. For the first time in their history, the Crystal Empire began to understand true fear. Not just fear of defeat, but fear of the unknown. Fear of an enemy that seemed to take joy in being unpredictable. As Swift stared at the tactical display, watching another human fleet appear where it couldn't possibly be, he finally understood what the elders had tried to warn them about. The humans weren't just fighting a war. They were teaching a lesson. Lord Stone stood before the massive war map, his crystalline form dark with rage. Half of the Crystal Empire's supply lines had been cut. A third of their fleet sat powerless in space, their crystal drives somehow corrupted by human computer viruses that no one had thought possible. Every victory they'd expected had turned into a humiliating defeat. "Enough," he roared, his voice causing the crystal walls to vibrate. "No more clever tactics. No more games. We will strike at their heart, Earth itself." His form pulsed with dangerous energy. "Gather every ship we have. Every weapon, every soldier. We end this now." Commander Swift's form flickered with alarm. "My lord, our intelligence suggests the humans have been letting us see only a fraction of their true capabilities. This could be a trap." Stone laughed bitterly. "Everything they do is a trap. But they cannot trap what they cannot survive. We go to Earth with overwhelming force." As the Crystal Empire gathered its armée, Admiral Wells stood in Earth's orbital command station, watching the enemy fleets approach on his tactical display. Behind him, rows of operators monitored streams of data, their faces lit by the soft glow of their screens. "They're coming, just as we predicted," Wells said calmly. "Time to show them Project Prometheus." Throughout the solar system, hidden installations activated. What the Crystal Empire had thought were simple sensor buoys revealed themselves as advanced weapon platforms. Abandoned space debris transformed into automated defense systems. Every piece of space junk humanity had left floating in orbit over centuries of space travel had a purpose. The Crystal Empire's fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their ships gleaming like stars. Lord Stone stood proudly on his flagship's bridge, expecting to see panic as his armada approached Earth. Instead, he saw something impossible. Human ships appeared from behind the moon, but they were different. Gone were the crude designs and primitive weapons. These vessels gleamed with crystal technology, not copied, but improved. Weapons the Crystal Empire had thought perfect had been rebuilt, enhanced, evolved into something new. Impossible. Stone's form flashed with disbelief. How did they? Did you think we spent all this time just fighting? Admiral Wells's voice came through on all channels. We were learning. Every battle taught us something new about your technology. And humans, we don't just copy, we improve. The human fleet moved with impossible precision. Their ships, powered by hybrid crystal human technology, performed maneuvers that should have torn them apart. They had taken the Crystal Empire's greatest strengths and merged them with human ingenuity. Project Prometheus. Wells continued, his voice calm as his ships moved into attack position. Named after a human myth about stealing fire from the gods. We didn't just study your technology. We understood it, improved it, made it our own. The battle that followed wasn't just a defeat, it was a revelation. Human ships phased through crystal weapons like ghosts. Their improved crystal drives let them appear and disappear faster than the Crystal Empire's ships could track. Everything the Empire had thought made them superior had been turned against them. In the chaos of battle, Commander Swift watched human ships using crystal technology in ways his people had never imagined possible. They didn't think like the Crystal Empire, bound by tradition and proper use. They experimented, combined technologies in ways that should have been impossible, broke every rule of proper crystal engineering, and it worked. As his mighty armada began to crumble under the human counterattack, Lord Stone finally understood. The humans hadn't just been fighting a war. They'd been preparing for this moment, learning, adapting, and waiting to reveal their true strength. The lesson wasn't over. It was just beginning. The Crystal Empire's Grand Council Chamber, once a place of pride and unity, had become a battlefield of its own. Commander Swift stood before the assembled leaders, his form steady despite the chaos around him. The tactical displays showed their fleets retreating from yet another defeat, but this time was different. This time, he had made his decision. "We must end this war," Swift declared, his voice cutting through the panicked arguments. "The humans don't just beat us. They learn from every battle. Each defeat makes them stronger. Each victory teaches them more about us." His form pulsed with determination. "And now our own people begin to question everything we thought we knew." Lord Stone's response was immediate and violent. His crystalline form flared with dangerous energy. "Traitor, you would have us surrender to primitives, to beings who don't even share a unified mind." But Swift wasn't alone. Around the chamber, other military commanders stepped forward, their forms showing similar signs of change. They had all seen too much, learned too much, to stay silent. "Our telepathic unity was our pride," one veteran commander said. "But the humans showed us it was our weakness. They think in ways we can't predict because they don't try to think alike." Reports flowed in through their network. Another fleet lost. 3 more worlds asking for protection from human raids. The humans didn't even bother destroying their targets anymore. They simply appeared, demonstrated their superiority, and left the Crystal Empire forces questioning their own abilities. "Look at this," Swift commanded, activating a central display. It showed human ships using crystal technology in impossible ways. They took our greatest achievements and improved them in weeks. Centuries of crystal engineering surpassed by beings who hadn't even seen our technology before this war. The chamber erupted in argument. The telepathic network, once a source of unity and strength, now carried waves of fear, doubt, and growing rebellion. More commanders were joining Swift's side. They had seen enough. Lord Stone's supporters fought back. "We cannot surrender. We are the Crystal Empire. We have never known defeat." "Then we never learned anything," Swift countered. His form had changed over the course of the war, showing patterns that would have been impossible before, patterns that looked almost human in their complexity. "The humans defeat us not because they are stronger, but because they know how to learn from defeat. Every failure teaches them. Every setback makes them stronger." The tactical displays told the story. Crystal Empire formations, once perfect and predictable, now broke apart in confusion. Ships refused to follow suicidal orders. Commanders questioned strategies that hadn't changed in centuries. "Even now, you don't understand," Swift continued, addressing Lord Stone directly. "The humans didn't just defeat our ships, they defeated our way of thinking. They showed us that unity without adaptation is stagnation. Strength without growth is weakness." A new alert flashed across the displays. Human ships had been detected approaching the Crystal Empire's homeworld. But these weren't warships. They were broadcasting on all frequencies, offering terms of surrender that were firm but fair. "They're giving us a choice," Swift said, his voice carrying a new emotion. "Hope. Not between victory and defeat, but between learning and extinction. They don't want to destroy us. They want to teach us." Lord Stone's form dimmed as he realized he had lost not just the war, but the support of his people. The Crystal Empire's perfect unity had been shattered, but something new was taking its place, something that looked suspiciously like human adaptability. "We thought we were superior because we were unified," Swift said quietly. "The humans taught us that true strength lies in diversity, in the ability to change, to grow, to learn from failure." The vote that followed wasn't even close. The Crystal Empire would surrender, but more importantly, it would change. The humans had broken them, but in breaking, they had begun to learn the most important lesson of all. The Great Hall of the United Earth Government Building shimmered with both natural sunlight and the glow of crystalline forms. Swift, now the leader of the reformed Crystal Empire, stood before the assembled human leaders and elder representatives. His form had changed dramatically since the war began, no longer perfectly uniform, but showing swirling patterns that reflected his new way of thinking. "We come before you," Swift began, his voice carrying both humility and dignity, "not just to sign a peace treaty, but to acknowledge a truth your people taught us, a truth we should have learned from the elders long ago." Admiral Wells sat among the human leaders, his face showing neither triumph nor anger. Next to him, Gray's ethereal form shifted gently, watching the proceedings with ancient wisdom. "Our greatest mistake," Swift continued, "wasn't challenging humanity's military might. It was believing that unity meant uniformity, that strength came from everyone thinking alike." His crystalline surface rippled with new colors, something his kind had never done before the war. "You showed us a different kind of strength." The halls darkened slightly as memories of the war played across massive screens, but these weren't scenes of battles or destruction. Instead, they showed moments of human ingenuity, mining ships transforming into defenders, primitive weapons combining with advanced technology, soldiers from different nations working together while using completely different tactics. "We thought we were studying you all those years," Swift said, his form pulsing with what humans had learned was amusement. "But we only saw what we expected to see. We counted your ships, measured your weapons, mapped your territories. We never understood that humanity's true strength isn't in any of those things." Admiral Wells stood, walking over to a simple table where the peace treaty waited. And what did you learn was our true strength? Swift's answer came with a shimmer of new patterns across his surface. Your chaos. Your wonderful, terrible, beautiful chaos. Every human thinks differently. Every group tries new things. You fail constantly, but you learn from every failure. You fight each other, but it makes you stronger. You are like water, gray finished, floating forward. As I told you at the beginning, flowing around obstacles, wearing away resistance, taking new shapes as needed, and always finding a way forward. The treaty signing was brief, but what followed was unprecedented. The Crystal Empire requested human teachers, not just for technology, but for art, music, cooking, sports, everything that made humans so diverse. They wanted to learn not just how to fight like humans, but how to think like them. There will be resistance, Swift admitted later, speaking privately to Wells and Gray. Some of our people cling to the old ways. Change is uncomfortable for us. Wells nodded understanding. Change is uncomfortable for everyone. That's why it makes us stronger. The pain of growth is what teaches us we're alive. As if to demonstrate his point, a young crystal being approached, its form showing chaotic patterns that would have been considered horrifying before the war. Now, it was a sign of progress. We've started an exchange program, the young one announced excitedly. Some of us will live among humans, while humans come to live among us. Lord Stone called it contamination, but its form sparkled with joy. We're learning to dance. Gray's form swirled with satisfaction. And so the lesson is learned, not through my warnings, but through experience. As it should be. The sun set over Earth, its light catching crystal forms and human faces alike. In orbit, ships from both civilizations moved together, no longer in formation, but in a beautiful chaos of cooperation and learning. The Crystal Empire had come looking for conquest and found transformation instead. The elders had warned them never to fight humans, but perhaps Swift reflected as he watched humans teaching his people new ways to move, to think, to exist. That warning had been the greatest gift of all.